Good morning, everybody. I'm so overwhelmed seeing you all here. It's been an honor and a privilege to plan this event, and it's a very exciting one for us to have put together. I wanted to start off with a thank you, a special thank you to our sponsors, Rockwell, who has given us this beautiful room. A wonderful speaker, Dan Mullins, is going to be joining us. Carsley Solutions, I still want to call you Carsley Magic or the Carsley Group, but they're here as well and help support us. Cella Technologies also helped us, as well as the JH2 Performance Group. So a little round of applause for all our sponsors. Special thank you to our steering committee. So when we started talking about what we wanted to do with this event, we had 5 wonderful folks volunteer from the Plex community. If you don't mind standing up if you're here. Kim, Vicki, Jan, Tammy, and Heidi. Thank you so much for all your work. Lots of work put in by this team. And a very special shout out to Linda Warden at Rockwell, who helped us immensely through all the logistics it takes to do a show like this. Jessica Williams from Whimsical Celebrations, our party planner, the one who put all the fun in this. And Jill Baton from Control+M Solutions, who's done all the administrative work, inviting you all here, taking all the heat for all my craziness over the last couple of weeks. So thank you for everyone who's done a great job planning this. We really appreciate your help. Let's have a hand for everybody. Thanks. So as Ken mentioned, our focus for these next 2 days is what's next. And now that you're on Plex, some of you have been on Plex a long time, some of you a little time, some of you will be putting in Plex shortly. A couple prospects here, right? So we want to talk about what's the next thing that can happen. And as we sent out topics to ask people what they wanted to learn, at Control+M, we're always focused on educating you. Yes, we're a consulting firm. And yes, we make money by billing you to consult, but that's not what these next 2 days are about. These next 2 days are about my opportunity to share with you a gentleman who has taught me a lot about manufacturing. But before we get there, I want to paint a little picture. About 7 years ago, I was actually sitting on a beach in Florida drinking a beer with my husband, and my phone rang. And it was one of my customers who'd been a customer for many, many years. And he said, "Patty, we got a problem. We have a facility that's losing money and they're blaming Plex. Could that be?" And I said, "Wow, man, I put Plex in a lot of places. I have never seen it go bad. I've only ever seen companies go up after Plex. I find it hard to believe." He said, "How fast can you get there?" And I said, "Well," said to my husband, "hold my beer." So I went to the facility. And of course, whenever we do an optimization, there's always the easy work, right? There's the settings, there's the silly stuff that's missing. We find the low-hanging fruit, but that really wouldn't make much of a good story, would it? Kind of make a boring story. The fun part of this story is the person that I met there who is their general manager. Now, I've been working in manufacturing since I was in my late 20s, and that's, 10, 15 years. So long time in manufacturing. And I'm married to an ops guy. I thought I knew everything about manufacturing. I saw what manufacturing did. I knew what it took to make a widget, whether your widget is a washer or a pair of Oshkosh Bagosh bib overalls, whatever it is. I thought I knew. And then I met this gentleman who taught me about a construct called operational excellence. He taught me what manufacturing could do. So I'd like to introduce you to a dear friend, Mr. John Howard II from the JH2 Performance Group. John.
Morning.
And John's going to talk about operational excellence. So John, why don't you just spend a minute telling folks all about yourself?
Well, that's a short conversation. But good morning, everyone. So great to see everyone. I was actually the guy that was blaming Plex. Didn't work when I first got to the site, so she didn't know that. And thank you to Bruce Nowak for allowing me a chance to spend a lot of time with your wife. We'll talk about it later. So operational excellence. One of the first things when I got to this particular site, parachuted in, losing money. And one other shout out, you guys have to have a Zach Farley type controller partner to be successful. So Zach was my controller. Where's Zach? There he is. So talk about somebody kicking my butt every day, telling me how much money I'm losing. That was a guy. So parachuted in, losing a lot of money. So we want to set the stage for a baseline of what, the type of environment we were in. A lot of constraints, no material flow. The teams were not working as teams, batch manufacturing. They were measured by KPIs that were not very healthy, like earned hours instead of schedule compliance. So of course our, supervisors were running parts that were good runs so they could get good metrics. So my training with Plex was they loaded Plex on my phone and said, go. So that was my training. So of course I had to scapegoat something initially. So I was complaining that, hey, I got the system. It's been in place for 5 years. I need data. And just a little background, I'm an old school Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. I'm only about 5 years younger than she is. So my whole entire life is Y as a function of X, define, measure, analyze, improve, control. So everything I see is based on data. So I couldn't get data out the system, and the data I got, I couldn't trust. So is anyone else in that situation today?
Just a couple. Is
Just a couple
everyone being
folks.
honest? Nope.
So data is important. So if I couldn't get the data, any data, so I can understand, can you hear me now? Good. Any data, but the data we were starting to get was bad, of course. So that took us to a whole lot of different places. Do we have the right KPIs? Do I have the right routings? What are my standards? How am I measuring myself? Where's my material? So on and so forth. So there was a ton, so you see our burning platform, there was a ton of constraints going on. But I had this Plex system that had just gone in 5 years previous. So why are we not using it? I still had supervisors that had work orders on their desk that they were still keying in. I'm like, I got scanners all over the place. I got Zebra printers all over the place. Why are you guys not using the system? So who is experiencing that right now in terms of you got Plex and you got some mediocre use of Plex, you got people still with paradigms that I don't trust it, and who's still using Excel spreadsheets?
Oh, now I know y'all are lying.
Come on now. Come on now.
That was so prevalent at the facility John was at. He would get a report that maybe came from Excel or Access, and we'd look in Plex, and the results would be wildly different. And they led to some extremely negative results.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest negative results that they led to there was the chaos in inventory.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it was, and does anyone here have inventory chaos? Yeah.
So
right?
we're not just talking about physical inventory of, right quantity in the right place, right part number. I'm talking about work in process, raw. I'm talking about the whole entire inventory cycle. We were just way off. So when we talked about voice of the business, voice of the employee, and voice of the customer, we were losing what, Zach, $300,000 to $500,000 a month. Our customers' on-time delivery was less than 60%. Our quality PPM was over 2,000, and we had cost of poor quality. Rework had a lot of sort, had a lot of returns. We had expedited freight. We had trucks sitting at the dock going through the merge, waiting on something to come out of the paint line. So does this sound familiar?
It was about as chaotic as you could possibly get. And John and I were down in Savannah last month doing an event, and at the airport trying to figure out how would we tell this story,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And I kind of came up with the idea of using the old kids game, Chutes and Ladders, right? Does anyone here ever play
Who
Chutes and
remembers
Ladders?
that?
Yeah, yeah. Jill, I don't see your hand up. So I mean, this is a kid's game that's purely based on chance, right? You can be as smart as you want, as prepared as you want. You can understand this. There's just no strategy here, right? You roll the dice. If you land on a ladder, you climb up. Well, 99% of you in this room landed on the Plex ladder,
Mhm.
and you climbed up, and you did a great job at that. But you see, there's more than one ladder on this board, right? So there are still ladders for you to climb. And when you climb that Plex ladder, the chutes maybe aren't quite as big, right? So
Yeah.
we think about maybe before at my company when we implemented Plex, I don't have a lot of metrics of performance of before or after, but one of the biggest things I remember is when a truck would pull in, if a customer needed a heat cert that had the certification from our metal suppliers, Sarah in shipping had to run clear across the building to quality, look up what purchase order the steel came from, pull the cert, make a copy, and run back to the other end of the building. Now, you might have thought, hey, sure would make a lot of sense to move quality right down by shipping, right? But that's an example of putting a Band-Aid on a compound fracture.
Yeah.
Right? So back to this game of chance. I mean, one of the reasons I love this game was literally used to get my butt handed to me regularly by my daughter with it. It always sort of,
How old were you when you were doing that butt kicking?
3,
5,
4?
6, maybe?
Well played, whoever that was. I like it. Right. So, I mean, it sort of humbles you and it makes you think differently. Would it have been easy to move quality to shipping? Yes. But would that have solved our real problem?
Yeah.
It really wouldn't. And Plex came in when we hit print on the shipping documentation, the right certificate printed at the time of shipment, right when it was needed. It was this great solution. So one of our big quality slides went away. Right? It really went away. And I thought this just was a perfect way to talk about the things that you can gain from Plex. So Plex is obviously a big ladder, new business opportunities, a big ladder. And John, I think I would say operational excellence activities would also be a big ladder.
Yeah, it is. So the Plex integration, so having Plex as an operating system and a foundation was phenomenal. Again, my OJT of Plex was horrible, I'd say, until this lady parachuted in and babysat me through the entire foundation of the configuration so I could understand what it was, the functionality, how was I supposed to use it, how was my team was supposed to use it, so on and so forth. So when you talk about complacency, we had like a line of demarcation. This was a non-union shop, but the managers always stayed in the office and the supervisors were on their own. Something didn't happen, they had a report, and the culture of the organization was not very trusting. The accountability was very low. And subsequently, people didn't use Plex. Do we have that situation today? What is your utilization? Who has the lowest utilization of Plex in here? 20% of your people are using it. 40%. 50%.
I'm liking this.
70%. Wow. So everybody's using Plex in your systems, respective systems. So that's a problem. We had material moving physically, but not virtually. I didn't understand what the routings were in the system. So when someone put in something relative to, here's what I did against this particular work order, I couldn't understand, were we on time, were we not? Did I have the right pieces? What was the quality, defects? How many pieces did we pass to the next operation? Did you set up the next operation as your internal customer to be successful? Could they be successful every cycle of work? So my whole entire strategy was basically, we had to get stabilized, we had to get organized, and there was a process in OpEx that required the data to be clean. So our routings were wrong, our time studies were wrong, nobody was using the system. So at this point, I had to report that Plex was killing my business.
And he did. And of course, when I got down there, we found out that there were things happening like they didn't really trust their operators to report their own production. So what would happen is some operators would report production if they felt comfortable. Others who didn't feel comfortable just gave slips to their supervisors.
Didn't do it.
And if you've ever been a manufacturing supervisor, you understand you're not sitting around with nothing to do. You're oftentimes working harder than anyone else in the room. So at the end of the day, these supervisors would go to report production. Well, what if an operation had 4 steps? Step 1 was reported correctly. Step 2, we're just going to report at the end of the day. But those parts get to step 3. Now that person wants to record his steps, but he can't because the inventory is not at the right step. So he goes to somebody and has the inventory changed to the right step, right? And he continues producing. At the end of the day, the supervisor can't produce, and he can't figure out why, because it's already past it. And that led a lot of chaos up in Zach's world, which made things a lot worse and a lot more difficult to really diagnose.
Yeah.
It was hard to find that sort of problem if we didn't literally go on the manufacturing floor. So the complacency, reports out of the system, And you had some safety issues as well, John,
Yeah.
too. Not a lot. I mean, hallelujah, everyone has all their
No,
arms
yeah,
and legs. And
we had a lot of safety issues, and that we were trying to focus on OEE. Everyone understands OEE is availability, the defect rate, and the performance of plan. Availability being the assets being available, your manpower. So we had a lot of manpower issues because of safety, and we'll get to leading and lagging later, but
right, yeah.
and we'll talk about that a little bit. But one of the other things that Plex helped us originally, and I needed to have some quick wins. The sequence of not being able to skip a process in the routing, because we did a lot of that. Got a lot of quality defects, had a lot of internal returns that says, hey, you missed a step. So Plex, when we used it properly, everyone was scanning from process to process, allowed us to not be able to skip processes. And that helped us out a lot and got us, closer to being a lot more stable. The quality issues, we were not using the quality management system module at all. So I had, some of the same OEMs you guys have, Caterpillar, JLG. They required us to provide all types of analytics that we couldn't, PPMs, any other kind of quality metrics for certain Circle K dimensions on prints. We couldn't do any of that, and we were doing it by hand. And of course, everybody knows you do it by hand. By the time you're ready to send that data, it's already old.
And it's probably fudged.
And it's fudged. Yeah, most of it was fudged. So we had a lot of safety and quality issues.
So as John mentioned, we did start with the data, and those
Any
are
more
some.
any more Trekkies in the building? Am I the only one?
Again, liars. Seriously, come on. We had some difficult conversations because I didn't know John very well yet. I didn't know how blunt I could really be with him. Those of you who know me know I pretty much don't have the ability to sugarcoat things. I think I missed that gene as a child. But
Bruce, that was day one. I don't know what she's talking about.
keep giving him a big head. You don't have to go home with him. Yeah, so I would have to tell John in front of his management team. Sometimes I'd have to take him aside and say, John,
Yeah.
what you're measuring isn't. Not only are they terrible measurements, you're not measuring the right things. So a couple great simple examples of that. When I was younger, I used to work at a little clothing company called Oshkosh B'gosh. And if y'all remember Oshkosh B'gosh, they were known for their impeccable quality. You never saw even an extra little thread out of the pair of bibs. But they paid on piecework. So they paid for quantity, but they wanted quality. So their measurements were leading them to the wrong things. We had that same instance at your company.
Yep.
So the company where John was working was a fabrication shop. They would take big sheets of metal, burn them into shapes, and then weld them, mold them, press brake, paint them, and make them into things. Well, their number one metric for the company was a metric called tons per hour. If you're taking steel coil and you're chunking it into sheets, the more pounds you produce, the better off you are. Yeah. But if you're taking a part that's a complex, intricate part that takes you a long time to build, but maybe only weighs 500 pounds, your metric's going to look terrible. The first profiling facility that I did there was live on Plex for maybe 6 months, and they called me and they said, Patty, we don't know what to do. Our scrap is down, our material utilization is up, our freight costs are down, our overtime is, every metric that we think runs this business correctly is down, but corporate is saying we're doing terrible because our tons per hour are down.
Yeah, remember, the parent company was a steel distribution company.
Yeah, so because I was able to explain that to these executives saying, look, you've been a successful company for nearly 100 years, but you're measuring the wrong thing, that's a hard message to give. It's easier if you're a consultant and you don't work for the company, right? Just because sometimes people take our word differently, but it's still a hard measurement to understand. So I had the unique ability to be able to come into John saying, I don't know that you're measuring the right things. And then, of course, he schooled me saying, yeah, you think that, this is what we're measuring, this is what we should, this is really where we ought to be. Yeah. So go ahead, John, let's talk about a little bit of the data.
So one of the first things we did, so anyone has done any ocean planning in here before? So we had some disconnects. My parent company was measuring me against a product of the coil. My customers are buying pieces. They're not buying sheets. So we had to go back and have a very tough discussion about how to cascade what my executive or corporate dashboard was down to my facility performance metrics. So we had to get that straightened out. So we did what's called a measurement system analysis, an MSA. And we looked at all the metrics within the organization. Again, voice of the customer, voice of the employee, voice of the business. And I had to add voice of ownership as well, because I still had to satisfy my parent company expectations at the same time. So we came out of that. We matched our KPIs and our metrics to our assets, to the material flow. We linked them to my financial performance. We linked them to the operational performance, and we linked them to the customer performance. And that took a while.
But it wasn't difficult because of Plex. So, for example, John wasn't
Plex
aware
did
of
make it
a
easy.
report called rolling average rate report. So I took John in and I said, well, they're telling you that it takes 4 hours to make this part. But when we look at the historical performance of the development of this part, it's really 6 to 7 hours. We're losing our can on it, right? So we were able to prove to them that historically we were better, but we also knew that the data contributing to that report wasn't as good as it could have been.
Right.
So we went from, I'm going to say total, dartboard kind of guess at how long things would take to a little bit better guess. Now we can look at the report and say, this is what it really is. So it
was more carnal knowledge. People saying, here's what I thought.
Right.
Now that also prompted us to go and take our process improvement team to actually study the job and make sure that what we had in terms of routing was correct. And we'll talk about a story here a little later about how that gave us an opportunity of going back to the customer and getting a price increase. So Plex was the foundation of this process measurement for us. So operational excellence. Any black belts, green belts in here? Black belts? Oh man, I got some training opportunities.
That's what I heard.
So anyway, so we got 3 subsystems: operating, cultural, and management. No, I'm fine. I'll take it and move. So operating system based on variation in waste elimination. So what kind of efforts do we have with waste elimination in here today? 5S workplace organization, time studies. What are you guys doing? Give me 2 responses. 5S workplace organization. How's that going? Thank you, Vicki. Thank you. Sustainable. It is sustainable. One more. Yeah, yes, ma'am. Okay, good, fantastic. Do you have you got a center of excellence somewhere that people can come to and look at it and say, hey, I want to be like that?
It's Vicki. It's all right.
So Vicki's cubicle, huh? Okay, got it. Anything? Yes, ma'am. Okay. How's the time studies?
Actually, that.
Are you using Plex?
You've been live almost 8 years, I think now, right? Yeah.
So where's Teresa at? Teresa?
Well, she maybe a little too much wine last night. Oh, there you are. Sorry.
So who's doing the backwards average of the last 10 cycles you ran apart as the new standard?
Oh, we are.
Use Plex. So cultural system. So we were disconnected. So my vision when I first got there was to have a synchronous operation. I wanted to make sure that demand and scheduling was driving the right requirements through the business based on the customer expectation, my process lead times, capacity, rough cut capacity, and then of course, performance to plan. Our teams internally, when we first got there, were actually working against each other. The measurement system, as well as the reward and recognition systems were, I independently did a great job, so let's celebrate. You sucked, so you are horrible, you got to work overtime, so on and so forth. What they didn't understand was the second and third order of effects. So this process over here that's doing great could be the bottleneck if they're running the wrong things and not providing what's needed downstream to the next operation who is now struggling. So we were able to go back and make sure we had, we leveraged internal customer relationships, not just external, but we leveraged internal customer relationships. So my output was this other person's input. And we had a whole lot of different things like red, yellow, green, and the shift handoffs. If it's red, supervisor, you can't go until it's green for the second shift person, and subsequently, same with second and third and first. So everyone was accountable for everyone else's success. And that was part of the culture piece. The other thing was everything counts. And we'll talk about everything counts in a minute. But everything counts is basically stop and fix. Everything counts is basically let's be totally immersed in what we're doing, follow the SOPs, manage the 5S workplace organization so that everyone is successful every cycle of work. And now we have more team accountability. Management system focused on creating the measurements and governance, the governance structure. So our initial dashboard was horrible. So there was no linkage between the measurements at all. There was no linkage. I couldn't tell if the operation was doing well today. I couldn't tell if I was set up for success tomorrow. We couldn't get to any of that. So instead of getting my butt handed to me every day, we sat down and scripted a really nice functional dashboard. So when I say functional dashboard, when we looked at the metrics, I could walk away and I knew exactly what I needed to do, either in my operation or this very specific area. They were not static or they were not lagging indicators. So we're going to talk about leading and lagging in a second, I think, at some point.
Yeah, we will.
And we'll go through that. Or next one. Yep. What we needed to do first was stabilize. Stabilize, once again, was chasing waste. Being relentless around chasing waste. So the one thing we left out was this plant was 1 million square feet. We had 6 different buildings. One building had stamping, burn to shape laser equipment. Another building and press brakes. Another building had the paint and shot blast. Another building had weld shop. Another building had some other weird shit. And then another building had machining.
It was all pretty dirty. That's what I remember.
Yeah, horrible.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the internal transportation? So we had stuff that was trucking at all times. And the one, yeah, go ahead.
And not being reported in
And not being reported.
We relied on a little guy named Bubba who always could find inventory. Bubba always knew where the inventory was.
And that was Bubba's job security too, by the way. So I hated to see, again, chasing waste. If I saw someone riding around on a fork truck with empty forks, that's a wasted trip. It's a wasted trip. So I stop them. I'm like, hey, you cannot ride this to the break room. You have got to pick up something or drop off something. Pick up something, drop off something. Had to be a route. So we were finally able to think about an initiative called campus compression. So again, Pat and I are going to make sure we have some continuity checks between Plex and OpEx. The data took me to a point to understand that the campus was too large. We had to take this 1 million square feet and cut it in half because most of my lead time, I say about 20% of my lead time, was in parts that were moving, non-value added movement. I had to take it from this building, then it went and sat somewhere because someone else was supposed to pick it up. Then it got lost. Then I had to go get Bubba. And then Bubba had to find it. Then we had to get it back en route. And that time, I got an asset waiting. I got a truck waiting. And the vision I wanted to have was I wanted to separate operations from shipping. I wanted to separate operations and manufacturing from shipping. That meant I had to get ahead of shipping so that they had at least 1 to 3 days of finished good inventory on the dock, ready to get loaded. And it separated all the confusion, waste, constraints, and non-value added stuff that was going on in operations. The unexpected downtime, the lost parts, the missed performance, the schedule compliance issues. So that's why stabilization was so important. So we couldn't get stabilized. It took us a while to get stabilized. The data helped us. Again, Plex was able to show me exactly where my issues were, show me exactly where my good performing areas were, and we were able to work accordingly.
It was also too, and just interject here, it was easier to do than you might think. It was easier to provide him that information because when we discovered people weren't scanning, John started a scan compliance initiative, and we put locations on the forklifts.
Yeah.
So if he saw somebody with parts on fork truck, he said, I'm going to look in Plex where that inventory is. It had better be in this location. That is a fork truck. If it's not, this is a training opportunity. We developed an audit process whereby the supervisor had to go out at 3 random times during the day and see, oh, this press is running. Bruce Nowak is running it. Mr. Nowak, why are you not logged into Plex? Here's a training opportunity to get you into Plex.
Yep.
And we actually had them print out the logs and hand write on there whether or not they were accurate. Now, when I teach people to do it, I'll give them a tablet and say, hey, go check it. But John wanted that handwritten. He wanted that emotional investment by the supervisors into checking for data and to let the operators see we were serious about this. And it led to some great changes. But those simple, tiny little things that you can do to make your operation great were very eye-opening to me.
Yeah, she says training opportunities. For me, it was shock and awe. So for the VP to come out to a workstation and pull up Plex and see, are you running the right stuff? Yeah, that was pretty powerful. For me to stop a forklift driver and says, so what is this and where are you going?
My favorite shock and awe story was after we were up, we had this initiative going maybe, I don't know, maybe a month.
John, I'm really a nice guy.
He is. This is very, so we're at the management meeting and these guys were accustomed to bringing in, reports and handing them out to everyone. John said, no, we're going to use Plex. From here on out, we've got everything we need, big TV. We're going to bring out Plex. And there was a gentleman who brought in a report and he laid it down. John said, what's this? He said, well, it's my job started on time report or something like that. And John took the report and he threw it in the garbage. He said, we're going to bring it up in Plex. Thank you for developing this, but I don't care. And it was that moment, I think, that your supervisors also realized he means business. And that's when we really started seeing change. So we were able to see what's next by digging into the data.
Yeah, you have to use Plex. If you don't have 100% hands in Plex, there's an opportunity for a data breach, there's an opportunity for a process breach, and the information you get, you might not be able to trust it to make decisions. And we were making decisions off of this data. So if I made a bad decision, I was calling the corporate saying, Plex screwed me, Patty screwed me, I can't get to work. But no, 100% scan compliance. The other thing, you just said it.
The production audits?
Yeah, the production audits. We did a lot of production audits. So again, we were relentless. This was every day, all day. This wasn't every once in a while. It wasn't when I had time. I was on the floor probably 70% of the time, walking around, making sure that we had compliance, because if they didn't see it from me, then they thought it was optional. And I have to admit, we lost a few folks from a performance standpoint because this was a condition of employment for everybody. This was not, I'm going to scan what I want to scan. This was, and I remember for us to get to 100% scan compliance, I had supervisors that had work orders on their desk that they hadn't keyed in yet from previous days. How does that work?
How can you be successful in shipping if Plex doesn't understand the inventory is there? So the other fun thing we did is we took away a lot of inventory permissions.
Yeah.
A lot.
Oh, yeah.
And there were times that I did not want to walk up to my car alone at night because there were people who were unhappy. There were constant conversations like, I can't do my job. Really? Why can't you do your job? Because I need to be able to edit the inventory container. All right. What are you going to edit it to? I'm going to change the location. All right. Let me show you how to do a move transaction. Well, I need to change the quantity. Well, why is the quantity wrong? I don't know.
I can't
Go
count.
find out why it's wrong. Because I'm looking at you, Lori, like because you're financial. From a financial perspective, the reason the quantity's wrong matters. You don't want operator scrap falling in the same bucket as subcontractor scrap or poor quality from suppliers.
Yep.
Because you can't make good decisions on just an adjustment.
That's right.
So,
and remember, I had Zach Farley on my ass every day. Yeah.
He's a lot tougher than he seems.
So remember, we talked about voice of the customer, voice of the business, voice of the employee, voice of ownership. Again, we started with stability, but I also turned that unstable, we were not profitable. Now remember, voice of ownership, voice of business said, I needed a path to profitability. So this is the model that we used. Again, it's in stability. Ms. Bertrand, thank you very much for 5S Workplace Organization. We did what's called plan for every part. So in my morning meetings, we talked about a plan for every part going through the facility that day. Midday, I wanted to know who was ahead, who was behind, and I needed a recovery plan before the end of the day to get back on track. So again, totally immersed, relentless, and we did stop and fix. There was no, I'll get back, on track in the next day. Hey, it's Monday, I'll get back on track by Wednesday. No, I needed a recovery plan by the end of this shift. And if I couldn't, what was the secondary routing? Again, remember, our Plex system did not even have the right routings in place, did not have the right standards, so we had to go back and fix all that. I was not a part of the go live, so the configuration, I think, was based off of just a basic discrete template.
I was not part of their go live either, by the way, which I should have probably called out right away. But
no, she wasn't.
no, that was
she
not.
wasn't. So we both
not a Control+M job.
That's right. We both inherited this crap. But anyway, it was a discrete, a generic discrete configuration that we had to go back and tweak. So then we got the flow and pull that was connecting the internal and external customer expectations and requirements. Built-in quality. Who's doing built-in quality in operations? Excellent. So that's not passing the defect. That's having effective error proofing in place, and that's making sure that we're got 100% SOP compliance. We had to do rough cut capacity analysis as well, which had never been done there before, which was a nightmare.
They had their finite scheduling engine set up. So theoretically, they should never have had to look at the capacity plan, but I saw configuration there that I didn't know was possible, and I can't believe anyone intentionally did. But in the finite scheduling system, you can say, if my resources are not available, just kick the can down the road another 20 days.
Yeah, another 20 days.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's a setting that says, if I don't have the resources, if I don't have the material on hand or on order, whatever, kick the job out 20 days. Well, we found out that nobody had edited their resources for 5 years. And one of the resources they need was a welder level 3. It was on some routings, but the welder level 3 resource field said there were none available. So the finite engine, because it works logically and it just does what it's supposed to do, said, I'm going to kick this job out 20 days, 20 days, 20 days. So operationally, they weren't told to make it.
That's right.
Until the customer called and said, hey, where are our parts?
Yep.
Why has this job been kicked out 20 days? So that was an example of a little configuration issue, but the metrics that they were running didn't uncover that until John started really diving in. I had never seen that before, and I certainly have never seen it again.
And we had several blind spots like that. That really kicked our butts. So remember, I talked about separating the manufacturing process from the shipping process, and we did that with some pull in supermarkets. Who's using supermarkets? What do I mean by supermarkets? Anybody? So yeah, kind of a pseudo warehouse. So what we had to do, remember, I had a lot of piece parts, had a lot of work in process. I got stamping, I got burn to shape, I got some press brakes, I got some welding, I got some machining, and then my downstream processes I call were machining, weld, complex weld, shot blast, and I had 2 different paint lines. So we had a supermarket because the first part of the organization, stamping and burn to shape, could outrun the downstream processes. So some of the demand management that we had to make sure that we were running enough quantities of the right parts within this horizon to make sure we could feed the downstream processes effectively and with some kind of a synchronous flow, working flow. So that helped us to get ahead, helped us to get our finished goods in place, and helped our flow and pull. Remember, we were profitable at that point, starting to get profitable, but not optimum yet. And then the next level was an executable manufacturing plan for everything is synchronous. My EDI signals and my demand management was releasing work orders properly within lead times. Here's what I forgot. The other metric we had that was kind of a more behavioral metric is did the job start on time? So when I do hospital transformations and I'm working in an operating room, one of their key KPIs is did the operating schedule start on time? Because once that gets behind, the whole entire day is shot. There's no making that up unless you take surgeries out of that schedule and have a buffer of time to be able to catch up. So if we didn't get started on time, I had enough variation and unplanned downtime that could kill my day. And anytime I had that, I'll call those profit leaks. Again, Mr. Farley used to kick my butt every day because I had so many profit leaks that I had to plug all these different holes. The only way to get there, back to voice of the employee and supervisor accountability, is everyone had to carry themselves the same way I did. Relentless, stop and fix, and make sure that everybody had, all the operators had everything they needed to be successful that day and that cycle of work. And that's what we're supposed to be there for. All the rest of us are overhead. If you're not supporting the person that's running that equipment, that's what we're supposed to do. So that helped us get to being profitable and sustainable. Core values, change management. Who's having change management problems right now? How are you managing new folks coming in and getting integrated with Plex, or new supervisors getting hired? Are those effective processes? Because those really kicked our butt. Because depending on the OJT does not work.
And don't forget, Vicki Beltran's going to be doing a change management presentation a little bit later. So yeah, so those of you who are struggling with it, make sure you see hers.
I expect payment at some point. Thank you.
Checks in the mail, baby.
Yeah. Leading and lagging indicators. So again, I'm talking about separating manufacturers from shipping. One of our leading indicators of success was, what was my finished good compliance on the dock every day? The goal was to be 1 to 3 days ahead. So in front of each dock door, we had a configuration of 42 feet, and they loaded it based on how they're going to load the truck for that particular customer. So when I did a visual walk, management by sight, I could go out and I could see that we had, okay, this is great. We're building it, which means operation is producing it, which means my schedulers were doing well in terms of demand planning and releasing work orders, and we were getting synchronous. So now if a piece of equipment went down and I had an unexpected, uptime, I didn't have, my customer was protected, at least for that amount of time. So the clock starts, maintenance. And speaking of maintenance, we didn't have we weren't not using any of the maintenance module. Preventive maintenance was basically, like I'm using the emergency room for my healthcare. It was wait for it to fall. We started doing mean time between failure, but then I found out that most of my maintenance guys were MacGyver types. So but that was the behavior. The supervisor management team before was like, just get me running, just get me running, just get me running for 5 more minutes or for 1 more shift. And I'm stop and fix. What does it take to fix this thing so we can get it back up, so we can properly measure it, see what the uptime's supposed to be. So now my OEE can reflect a real-time operational effectiveness. So job start on time. Again, we had red, yellow, green readiness for every job. Did you have the right working process? Was the job changed over? Did you have the right SOPs? Did you have the right tooling? Again, we weren't using the tooling module either, and we're going to get to that in a minute. Shipment stage, go ahead.
Switching to leading indicators too also helped identify another problem with the finite scheduling engine, which was they didn't have any time fence locking.
Yeah.
So the reason that the
that was
laser
important.
department was not starting on time was because they didn't have the right materials, because the material handlers were trained to bring these are big bundles of steel. This isn't something that's easy and quick to move, right?
Right.
They'd bring the bundle of steel and they'd line it up, and then someone would run the finite scheduler, the job sequence would change, and then the gentleman in laser would have to go sorting through and spend a lot of time moving material again. So we were able to lock the schedule for, I think it was 48 hours, just so that at least the material that needed to be there was there. So changing from leading from lagging indicators to leading indicators really can help you. But I think most people run their business on lagging indicators.
They do.
You know why? It's easy.
It is easy.
It is easy. It's harder to come up with the dashboard that says, did my job start on time, than it is to look at the on-time delivery report that already exists.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to be creative and sort of change the way you think. Think about what's next. Think about what could I be doing? And everybody in here whether you're operations, IT, accounting, sales, HR, quality, engineering, whatever your role is in your company, like John mentioned, second and third order of effects, you can impact this. You can impact this by when you go back to your company and say, this is what I've learned. Are we measuring leading versus lagging? What would the leading be for the lagging indicators?
Mhm.
To sit and have that thought process was very new to me 7 years ago. And I think it changed my attitude toward life quite a bit. And I think when I saw it work so extremely well, we actually try to build that a lot into our implementations, thanks to you, John, and here I'm gonna have to cut him another check. But
Yeah,
it was a big sea change. It was a cultural change. And it led to some really good
it
results.
did. Now, remember, the lens is to look at a piece of information and then be able to go make a decision right now. So all my lagging indicators didn't give me a chance to do anything except get my ass handed to me every reporting period. All I could do then was talk about the gap and what I was going to do next. Leading indicators said that now, if I make sure that I get this done right now, is going to lead to a successful outcome. And again, remember, I'm old school master black belt. Y is a function of X. If I can predict my outcome and then measure and monitor my X's, then I can make sure that I can repeat that and reproduce that every time. And that's how I had my supervisors looking at the world. The other thing with that scheduling piece was I had to negotiate with my supervisors and with sales because I love the sales organization. Let me put that out there. But when a customer calls and says, "Hey, I need to drop in something," it's okay for the salesperson to say yes because they get the high five and hey, thank you, you saved me. But then again, the second and third order effects in manufacturing is I got to change something around. I got to move some material. I got to change the sequence of my schedule. And that's disruptive. Remember, the internal customer construct was I am producing everything for my next operation now, not necessarily for an external customer that wants to get something dropped in right now. So we negotiated, and if they wanted to drop it in and needed it right now, it wasn't the same price. They had to pay a premium. And come to find out, when they found out about the premium, it wasn't so much emergency anymore. They could wait.
They were asking for miracles because they knew they could ask and
They knew
someone
they
would
could
say
ask.
yes. So a little setting change, I can't remember the setting off the top of my head, but a little setting change on the order release screen that said, "Hey, you quoted 42 days. You just promised 15. Are you sure you want to do that?"
That's right.
That little pop-up question helped sales understand that they needed to either add an expedite fee or at
Yep.
least talk to somebody,
Hmm.
right? So they were just tiny changes, which is what I loved,
Yeah.
because when we started looking at things differently, and that sort of leads me to one of my favorite sayings John's always had, which is everything counts. And I like to use it in my everyday language. Everyone who works for Control+M Solutions know that when you turn in a work product, I need it to be a good work product. There will be times when I'll say to Shannon, I need what we call a Q&D, a quick and dirty. Hey, Lori's on the phone. She needs to know how to do something. She's going to do it once and put it to memory. She doesn't need a full, beautiful work instruction.
Yeah.
But sometimes you do need a full, beautiful work instruction. And when we have one, I want it to be grammatically correct. I want the fonts to be nice. I want the bullets to matter. You know why? Because if you are buying work product from me, I want you to know that I believe in quality, and quality is important to me. Because if quality isn't important to me, aren't you going to wonder what else I'm not caring about?
Yep.
You are.
Yep.
And it also reminds me of something I heard this past weekend. Kenny Smith was giving a presentation that I was at, and he mentioned the words "an obligation of
Excellence.
excellence,"
Yep.
and that just really resonated to me as well. So I think, John, that you and Kenny are going to now hold little parts in my brains. Everything counts, and we have an obligation of excellence. But the greatest thing that you have
Mhm.
here, besides that obligation of excellence, is you have an excellent tool that can give you nearly everything you need to succeed. Think about this.
Yep.
I mean, when we tell you what we achieved there, you're
Mhm.
going to be blown away by the results that we got. But it was everything else. It was scan compliance. It was, are you reporting your own production? Are you feeding the upstream and downstream customers that you have? Everyone here has heard of who's your internal customer, right? Whether you're like IT, we're whoever I'm putting a computer in for,
Right.
whoever I'm writing the report for, right? For us, internal customers pretty easy. You are our customers, but internal customers. If I've got a problem with tooling, I'm calling Albie. But if I have a problem with food and beverage quality, I'm calling Ken. I got an accounting issue, I'm calling Zach, right? I don't claim to know everything in Plex. I always say if anyone tells you they know everything about Plex, they're either delusional or they're lying, right? We have a strong team that works together, just like your companies have a strong team that works together. And for us, it is everything counts, and we count on one another. And it is, I think it is important.
Yeah. It was great to see, and I say from a cultural change standpoint, when I started talking everything counts in my production meetings or even in my all hands meetings or talking to the employees or the value added employees at their jobs, they started talking not in terms of what I think, they started talking in terms of Plex, in terms of data, in terms of output, in terms of what work is required. So the whole entire conversation changed from, this blame game and CYA to very objective conversations about how can we do better. So that lens helped us to get to that executable manufacturing system where everybody was concerned about everything in that plan for every part for that customer. The plan for every part, did we make the part in time? Did we make the part in spec? Did we make the part where we made money? So we went from all this waste, we got stabilized. So now I'm talking about, did we hit the margins? I mean, that is a part of the journey I'm talking about. A part of that cultural change, part of the operating change, part of the management change. And that was my metaphor. So we went from losing $500,000 a month to breaking even to having an opportunity because of the data. The data took us back to the right routings, took us back to, we had one part that every time I ran the part, I'm like, why am I losing $2,000 every time I run this part? So I got my process improvement, my IE, my supervisor involved. That's the other thing. Everybody, I had cross-functional teams involved with everything we did, and the operators on the floor, because they're an expert. This person ran the job every day. This welder welded this job every day. They knew what it took.
They also knew that when they were in control panel that they were never meeting their performance goals.
You can see it.
So there's every day chipping away at their ego.
Yeah.
If every day that you're told you're not good enough and it's on your screen right in front of you, eventually you're going to believe it, right?
Yeah.
So once we had good data and they started achieving their performance goals, you could feel the change.
That's
there was almost like an excitement.
It was.
Instead of people who felt like they were beaten down, people felt like, wow, A, they're listening, and B, I guess I am pretty good at this job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And that was a fun thing to see.
It was.
By starting at that beginning. I mean, you don't expect that, but
yeah,
good.
And it went from being personal attacks in these meetings about you didn't get the work done, your performance is this, and this, to they could see within Plex, control panel, these other things about their performance, they could get ahead of it. And when it did come to the production meetings, it wasn't excuses. It was, here's what I got to do next. Here's what I need. And they're looking around at their peers. And now I got a room full of folks who are talking about the success of the business and not just the success of their department. And that was huge for us. Let's see, value stream, standardized SOPs, order compliance. Again, to the day I left, scan compliance. It had to be 100% scan compliance. The jobs had to start on time so that we met the lead time. We had to make sure that the next operation was set up for success every cycle of work. And that became the DNA of the organization. Bottlenecks, accurate data. So I guess I can call out the customer. JLG was the customer, and we were making this huge weldment.
Anyone here work with JLG?
Yeah, let me ask that first. So anyway, we were losing our butt on this product. The way it was cost estimated at first, remember the parent company is a steel distribution company. So they saw everything as a product of the coil and weight. So when they first estimated this product, they did it based on weight, not on what it took in terms of each process process time, how am I going to charge per process? What is that activity-based costing for that, so on and so forth. So we were able to do that analysis and came back and we asked for almost a 3 to 400 piece per piece charge increase for this product. And when we took it back to the customer meeting, they actually laughed at me and said, we were wondering when you guys were going to get to our shared cost model. We were not obligated to tell you that you sucked and we were making all this money off of you.
And
but
being good for quality.
completely different quality. That was a win for us because now that well supervisor who put all that time in that time study, they looked at the best. They actually went to, how do we do that? We did some design of experiments, had 2 or 3 different weld operators who worked on that product. They each had their own weld. Everybody knows I can give this person these parts and give them the print, but then they have their own style. We found a welder that had the best, most effective. Number one, it was an SOP that maintained safety and ergonomics. They could do it without building a defect, and they could do it within rate, which is what the SOPs are supposed to be designed behind. And we locked in on that, and that was a huge win. So what Patty talks about, these incremental wins that we had that were, they could seem insignificant for this team, for this particular effort, it was huge. And we were able to celebrate those things all the time. We went from very low Plex utilization to, again, it was a part of the DNA of the organization. But you had to get stabilized. Again, 5S workplace organization, let's get the waste out, chase the waste, make sure we have good standard operating procedures that are repeatable, and you measure that. And now we're doing all of our measurement, all of our data handling is within Plex. So now I can't report without using Plex. So we would have kind of a setting like this. I had a computer over here. So each one of the supervisors would come to the computer when it was time for them to present their output. No more, we got rid of PowerPoints. We got rid of all these other kind of documents they wanted to show and all these other excuses. They had to pull up their information in their personal dashboards and talk through, peel back, get a recovery, do some root cause corrective action, and then here's the help I need. At one point of this particular culture, asking for help was looked down on as a weakness. But now asking for help was a strength in the organization. Again, we had to change the DNA. Want to look at
So
did I really say this?
you did. You said that to me, and I wrote it down that day in your office because I love what John said. He said, Plex didn't solve my problems. It pointed out the problems that I need to solve. So I think everyone here who's been through the Plex sales cycles probably heard a salesman say Plex is not a silver bullet, but it'll let you be a silver bullet. It can be, that trajectory to get there. And it solved real problems. John's fond of saying it's not PowerPoint money, it's real money. So as we came through here and we made these tiny changes and we saw these cultural changes that did lead to the bottom line, it's real easy to try to cost justify. If you're financially motivated like I am, I always want to say, okay, well, we're going to put in Plex and we're going to reduce our headcount by whatever. That wasn't what this was about at all. What this was about was really understanding the business and using the resources we already had. And it to me, I mean, that was 7 years ago you said that, John. Yeah. And sometimes when people say things like that stick in my mind.
Well, there's one thing I do want to add, though. Part of the strategic paradigm that my parent company had was when they bought Plex and implemented, they thought that was a silver bullet. So when they implemented Plex, they thought, okay, you got the operating system you've been asking for. We got rid of this old legacy system that no one else is supporting. So you got to be successful starting tomorrow.
So everybody here has been through phase one, just about everybody here. We talk about phase two. Of course, when you're talking about phase two from a controlling perspective, we're saying, okay, what modules do you want to put in, right? But when you talk about phase two from an operational excellence perspective, it's doing what John did with our help down at this facility. And a lot of what we fixed was really discipline, right? Nobody wants to have their eyes stabbed out by the fork in that little girl's hand. By the way, that's that little girl.
That's her.
One of my favorite pictures of my kid when she was 2. Doesn't she look like she wants to kill me? Um, literally murder her mother. I made her take a bath.
But look, take a look at that left hand.
she's plotting my death. Yeah, so I mean, we did go through and enforce discipline, right? And that was a big thing. And those configuration issues, they were small, but you know what? They were hard to find.
They were hard to find.
And I'm going to pick on you, Jeff. I know you're looking at putting in finite. This was a case of the most out of control finite I've ever seen in my life, and it was still fun to fix because it went from finite's killing us to, oh my God, finite's saving us.
It's working.
So we learned that we needed to have a mix of finite and infinite scheduling. We cleaned up the old bad data, the routing and crew rates, and that discipline. And when Plex became considered the only truth, so John began putting things into the system that were not in there before. For example, safety, injury logs, OSHA log, all those fun things. So that, we have to approach this not as saying, I'm able to whack a person because they don't have to do all these reports, more like, okay, Plex is going to give us this real time. What can that person do now to add value?
Yeah, from a safety perspective, we started looking at near misses. So I would consider near misses an indication that there's going to be an accident here at some point. So we were to take those, we put them on a map, we mapped them in different departments. We saw what the density of the accidents were. Our safety team went there and yada, 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 got that fixed, got that moved out. And we were able to see that performance improve, which meant my people were healthy. My commitment to my team was everybody goes home safe, tired, but safe. And then we were able to plan accordingly because unplanned absences of people because they're hurt. There's a workman comp expense and so on and so forth. So that was another one of the leading indicators we had.
That and demand planning, I think, in addition to saying yes to everything.
Yeah.
I recall there was an issue with EDI too, or accums weren't really correct, so we had to fix that. Which, of course, that's about as much as I can say about EDI without sounding like a moron, because I can barely spell EDI. But so, John, well, because we're down to about 9 minutes, we're going to have to sort of go through this quickly. But if anybody wants a copy of this, we're happy to share it with you.
Yep. So when Patty talked about, so again, remember, I stepped into a basic configuration. So anytime I felt like I needed to do something different, I'd look over at Patty or Colin at the time and say, hey, can I do this in Plex? And 20 minutes later, they come back and say, yep, we can do it in Plex. So purchasing, scheduling, that PEP integration was our profiling area that gave me an opportunity of doing burn to shape effectively in terms of density within a sheet of metal sheet. Inventory, of course, data, permissions was huge. And of course, reporting, productivity, efficiency, yields, and that was getting us back to OEE, which was important for us too. When I first got there, I think our OEE was in like 29%, 30%.
I got those numbers in the future slides, how much they came up.
Let's look at the next one. Again, quality, quoting was huge. So we were able to look at, I wanted to see all the quotes we had out there. I wanted to see what my win percentage and loss was. I wanted to peel back the losses and make sure we understood where we were off, why were we not competitive, where were we relative to the should cost model for that customer. We didn't use tooling. Can you believe I got machining centers, I got press brakes, and we weren't using the tooling model.
Easy fix.
Easy fix.
And this is where we had some very direct successes, right? This real-time data not only helped us understand what was happening on the manufacturing floor, helped the company quote better, because a lot of people quote basing their future prices on current activity, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so if we're basing it on bad data, we're just sending out more bad quotes. Lower cost of quality, obviously. We had fewer defects. We had less overtime, less premium freight. And to me, the bottom numbers on here are what really tell the story, right? So there was a dashboard. I just looked this up compared to John before we started and how the company's running. 151% increase in your job efficiency, and by that I mean running to rate, right? So if you look at the daily shift report and see how you're running to standard, but the real money there is gross profit increased by 109%. They had a negative gross profit when we started. They had a negative gross profit. What that means is we're taping $1 to every part we're sending out. And that's before they paid for people like John and I.
Yep.
This is gross profit, right? So these were significant improvements that fell right to the bottom line. But
Now,
indirectly,
one thing with that. So
Oh.
one thing about that path of profitability, me and Mr. Farley looked at our budget. I had to make sure this is what we had for plan. We had our actual. When we saw the differences, we locked in on how do we sustain that. And then we went back from that to what's our stretch goal, because we know we can do better. The first part was really just blocking and tackling. So now we're talking about being more effective, more efficient, and now let's go and hit the bigger target. Again, campus compression, 1 million square feet down to 500,000. That took out so much travel time.
and let them use those buildings for other purposes.
Yeah,
Right?
we were able
to turn it
to-
into boat storage.
Yeah, we
Rent it to
actually
FedEx.
leased one of the buildings that was about 300,000 square feet to a customer who wanted to put some of their products in there that were coming to us anyway. So we were able to get some revenue from that. Culture change. You go ahead and take this one.
Yeah, the culture, like I mentioned earlier, it was great to see people who, instead of being told every day that they didn't meet their goals, to understanding that they did meet their goals.
Is that
It was
Jill?
huge.
That's
No.
actually Jill. Is it?
No, darn it! If Jordan was here, I'd tell people it was him. So no, that was just a stock picture. I
Just
can't
kidding.
wait to see all the memes that are going to come out of that one of you, Joe. That, like I said, the historical data led to better quoting and general discipline. People held their heads a little higher when they walked around
They
the
did.
building. They were proud of their work. They
Yep.
went from being constantly to whip to being, hey, patted on the back.
Yep.
And that makes a huge difference.
Sure, sure.
Just to do that. We also had to solve. Mike, are we boring you?
Oh, I'll be back.
Does anyone hear of this aged inventory problem, right? Where you got to write off $100,000 of the inventory and your accountants won't let you because they can't take the hit?
He
Anyone
wouldn't
have
let
that?
me. He wouldn't let
Yeah.
me write it off.
Farley would not let that happen. And what was happening is they didn't control the container status to hide that inventory from the planning engine.
That's right.
So, thankfully their main supplier was, right across the railroad tracks. It wasn't a problem getting inventory, but wow, when you ask for inventory at the last minute, boy, it comes with a price,
It's
right?
probably getting good inventory though.
So we were able to serve all gods by saying, hey, look, Zach, you can leave it on the financial statements, but I don't want to see it in the planning engine. And that was just as simple as a container status
Yep.
flag. And if anyone wants to know how to do that, let me know. You
Is
keep
anyone
your
having that
money.
problem?
Sharona, hate to call you out, sweetie, but yeah, it's pretty typical.
Yeah.
So in sort of wrapping this up and bringing it all full circle, maybe what you heard today is not what you expected. Maybe you thought I'd come to this presentation today and teach you how to use a fun new module. Guess what? That's what's all happening over the next day and a half. What I wanted you to envision was what's next for your company. Now that you have had Plex, and now that you've climbed that ladder, how can you leverage Plex to become a better company?
Mm-hmm.
How can you apply operational excellence? I think I really, really saw the difference there. You already have all of the tools.
Yeah.
And again, maybe you're not in operations, maybe you're IT or sales or HR. You can make a difference. And a lot of these tenants, I guess I would call them, can apply to other parts of your life as well. Operational excellence. It doesn't matter what kind of business that you are. For example, John mentioned he does hospital turnarounds, right? So some of the things that pertain to hospital management can pertain to manufacturing. He also coaches our company to make sure that we stay as sharp as we possibly can and are as good as we can be, and how Control+M will bring in manufacturing operations excellence into what we're doing with you, because we want you to be better. We've invested interest in us both succeeding. So take away today, when you start going to sessions, how can I take what I just learned in this session and make my company better or make myself better? And John, this one's all you.
So yeah, this is one thing I live by. God we trust, everybody else bring data. Got it?
I should have edited that and said, and God we trust, everyone else bring Plex data.
Plex data.
Yes.
I copyright that one.
Yeah.
So one of the things, one last thing, I got about 20 seconds. So now we're looking at how do we self-fund? How do we self-fund? So one of the, again, path of profitability modules, one of the path of profitability models that we use was, I want to look at each one of the effective budget line items: cost of poor quality, cost of poor shipment, overtime, premium freight, demurrage, all these different, what I call profit leaks. How do I close these? How do I reduce these? How do I make sure I put a solution in place that solves this every cycle of work? Or I have a key indicator that says this is about to happen and I need to do something before it does. So now, like this Friday, I'm going to a place and we're going to talk about, hey, we're going to implement Plex. It's going to cost this much, but here's the return on investment. And here's when we implement these OpEx models, this methodology, that you'll be able to self-fund this, and it's not necessarily a capital expense. So we're going to reduce your quality defects. We're going to make sure that you manage your resources and have limited overtime. If you have overtime, it's because demand is here, not because performance is here. You're not going to buy as much material. Now that your quality has gone in the right direction, you don't have to buy all this replacement material. Our inventory is going to be more effective in terms of management. You're not going to lose it. You're not going to. We were shipping more product to customers, and of course they weren't telling us. We're supposed to be shipping 100 pieces. We ship 150. Go back and what happened to those 50 pieces?
Build them for the smaller
right.
quantity.
So all those kind of profit leaks, but now we're looking at how to take our partners, our client partners, to another level of self-funding, because they have these integrated processes, they have these integrated solutions. It's becoming the DNA of the organizations, and now they're becoming profitable with the right tools. So thank you.
Well, actually, we're not quite done, but I didn't realize this was going to
B?
do that. But so I wanted to talk a little bit about logistics. By the way, John, thank you. Can I get a hand for John?
Thank you all. Thanks for listening.
He's changed all of our lives at Control+M, and we're very grateful for that. So if you want to talk with him afterwards, let us know. But we're going to let the fun begin, right? Everything is going to be either in this room or a room that's called the Hub. Everyone should have an agenda. The Hub is pretty easy to find. When you got off the elevator, you took right to get here. You're going to take a left to get there. And Jessica, Jessica's going to be at the Hub, so you can either follow her there. We've got about 15 minutes here. Make sure everybody keeps your badge. I'm not wearing mine right now, but I think y'all are wearing these. If you don't bring your badge back tomorrow, you're going to have to go through the whole security rigmarole again. So make sure that you bring it. Don't lose it. Our sessions are 15 minutes long, and they're starting on the hour. So you'll have plenty of time to get between places. If you are a prospect and you want to talk to other Plex customers, stick around and stay with me. I'm going to ask everyone a personal favor. We are on the same floor as the executives here at Rockwell. So when you're going between buildings, we want to kind of keep the chit chat down to a nice low level, because they're conducting a business here and we're grateful for them letting us use this room. So we want to make sure that they'll let us come again. And the thing that everyone cares about the most tonight, happy hour, is from 5 to 7 in the Hub. As you go into the Hub, you're going to see a bunch of tables. You'll see that they're set up for happy hour tonight. Does anybody have any questions? We got about, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes left before we want to really wrap things up. If you do, go ahead, maybe hit us up after this. But most of all, I want to say thank you. Thank you for coming. Yes. Thank you for loving Plex like I do. Oh, Vicki, we do have a question.
I do. In terms of logistics, if people are in and out of this, some sessions are here, some are there, can people or their spot like they can do some stuff?
Sure, why don't you? Yeah.
We'll call out.
Yeah, so if you want to come and go. Did everybody catch that? Vicki said, hey, if you want to leave your things here, if you're coming in between rooms. So, yeah, go ahead. And our next session will be Albie Bell is going to be doing workflow in the other session. Dan, you're next up here, right? Yes, yeah. So thank you, everybody. Hope you've enjoyed the keynote. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, baby.